First United Methodist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Lord, tonight this council gathers once again, each putting their personal agendas and their time aside and picking up the cause for the people of Port Orange. Those of us who sit before them come with a myriad of hopes and dreams for a collective future. And we all ask, council and residents alike, for wisdom, for success, for provision, for safety, mid these turbulent times, for all the people of Port Orange and beyond. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to need a second here. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Ford? I'm sure she'll be on in a minute. We're trying to get her virtually, but with the switch. Councilmember Tremont?
Here.
Councilmember Stiltner?
Here.
Vice Mayor Bastian?
Here.
Mayor Burnett?
Here. Proclamations. This one is for Florida City Government Week. Whereas the city government is the government closest to most citizens and the one with the most direct daily impact on its residents. And whereas city government is administered for and by its citizens and is dependent on public commitment to and understanding of its many responsibilities. And whereas city government officials and employees share the responsibility to pass along their understanding of public services and their benefits. And whereas Florida City Government Week is a very important time to recognize the important role played by city government in our lives. And whereas this week offers an important opportunity to spread the word to all the citizens of Florida that they can shape the influence this branch of government, which is close to the people. And whereas the Florida League of Cities and its member cities have joined together to teach students and other citizens about municipal government through a variety of different projects and information. And our city wants to also use this week to emphasize the importance of volunteering and giving back, because volunteering strengthens communities, solves problems, and improves lives. And whereas Florida City Government Week offers an important opportunity to convey to all citizens of Florida that they can shape and influence government through the civic involvement and positively impact lives by volunteering. Now therefore, I, Donald O. Burnett, Mayor of the City of Port Orange, Florida, do hereby recognize the week of October 19th through the 25th as Florida City Government Week, and it is so proclaimed with my signature and the seal of the city. Y'all can clap. There we go.
I'm getting it, man.
Not bad, not bad. Public comments on the consent agenda. Are there any comments on consent agenda items?
Councilmember Ford has joined us.
All right. There being no comments on the consent agenda?
That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, I didn't use it hiding behind the TV. Well,
Hi, Mayor Burnett and Council. My name is Derek Lamontagne. Just want to speak briefly, and I can take my mask off if that's okay. It's up to you. Please let me know if it's not. Thank you very much. So, yeah, this item just mentioned something that I had spoke about a few months back regarding some maintenance around ponds, and I would like to just maybe see if there's an alternative that we can do, because this item 8 mentions a bid award of about $22,000 to maintain maintenance of the police shooting range down, towards New Smyrna. And basically, as you hopefully are well aware, the range is kind of in the middle of a wetland nature area. It's not a public really place where people go. And yet, according to these numbers, this bid plans to spend $2,000 on fertilization, like right in our kind of water, recharge area, and also another $1,200 on disease and insect control. And I'm just wondering if we can maybe just cut those chemical spraying out of there, considering this is not really seen by the public that much. It's really out of the way, and like I said, these areas are very environmentally sensitive. Additionally, I did actually I have the PowerPoint from before, if you want to mention. So I just want to know if kind of our policy as a city can kind of shift towards less spending on the mowing around such ponds, because it does mention also we're spending $7,600 just mowing around these ponds that are really just way out of the way, like in our well and water recharge area. And I would like to have, those kind of stay natural, especially since, again, nothing's over there. No one's seeing these. So I really don't want us to spray chemicals in our water recharge area. So I don't know if you can just kind of line item any of those things. And again, this I got from page 26 of the agenda. I guess that's what I'm looking at in case you're curious. It actually is the breakdown. And again, I think the city has the ability to kind of cut things. And if you don't want to spray chemicals, kind of where our waters recharge and no one's going to see it, I highly encourage you to make that change and save the city some money at the same time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak to any items on the consent agenda? There being none, I need a motion to approve the agenda for the evening.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for the meeting for tonight. All in favor signify by saying aye, and Marilyn, raise your hand.
Aye.
That's all 5 of us. Any opposed? Motion carries. I need a motion in regards to the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda items 7 through 11.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second, for the approval of the consent agenda. Call the roll.
Councilmember Ford. Is that a yes?
She's muted.
We'll wait.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, by vote. Citizen participation agenda, Derek LaMontagne.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Thank you again, and feel free to take the other time off my title. I plan to speak for 15 minutes, and once again, sorry for the mask. I appreciate everyone wearing pink though for October and Breast Cancer Awareness Month, if that's possibly other good causes going on right now. But I would like to, and I don't know how to. There's no key, or is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just set up. I have a few maps and so forth I'd like to talk about. So I requested time on this meeting's agenda because I would like to kind of promote and just bring awareness to one of the ballot initiatives, and again, just doing my part to kind of, again, support a good cause that I care about, which is protection of our environment. So as all of you know, I'm sure but this is just for the general public as well, Volusia Forever is on the ballot. It's the last ballot initiative on most or all people's ballots, I believe, in the city. So again, it's after all the people you're voting for and the state level ones. This is our local ones put on there by people like me and other just concerned citizens who would like to see it continue. So it is again, I'm speaking about Volusia Forever. It is a land acquisition program entirely, meaning the funds cannot really be used for anything else other than just maintenance of the land. And some history on the project I'd also like to talk about. And just to give a brief breakdown, I'll be talking about the Volusia Forever, the history, and maybe the future, requesting maybe some ways that people can help, and then actually invite all of you to a workshop with a nonprofit called the 1,000 Friends of Florida, which will be late in a few months with a bunch of stakeholders that will kind of bring together growth management and water quality and things like that. It's very timely to kind of see what kind of lands we need to protect, and basically having this tool would be very beneficial in my opinion. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up some maps for everyone to see. So and for people at home, again, this is the best I could, or the county provided. I don't know how good a quality you can tell if you're looking at this, but I am showing the Volusia Forever land acquisitions over the last 20 years. So again, this ballot initiative was approved in 2000, but actually it has an older history than that, as many of you are aware again. But in 1986, actually, there was the first Volusia County became the first county, I believe, in the entire country to have a land acquisition ballot initiative or a program that the people voted on. So that was not called, obviously, Volusia Forever. I think it might have been called Volusia 2000. I was not voting back then. But then in 2000, it was actually called Volusia Forever. It was paired with Echo and some other things, and it was set aside as a of course, a bond, and bonds have to have a time to them, so it's a 20-year bond. But the good thing about having it that way was that the land could be purchased on the front end when it was cheaper and, before it got built on and things like that. So that's a benefit of having it as a bond, which is, again, the wording on the language this time is basically exactly the same. I think there's just a small increase for like inflation, but these programs are, I'm just really speaking on Volusia Forever right now. The program is, it's received numerous awards. It's received awards from the Nature Conservancy, the Trust for Public Land, Thousand Friends of Florida, and the National Association of Counties, just to name a few. Some of the lands that we've purchased, again, are just on this map. They, of course, include areas around our very own Spruce Creek Preserve, including, as many of you are aware, a few years back, I think it was 2012 roughly, you purchased, with the help of, I think, some other funds, partnering with the county and the state, purchased a part of the Stanaki property, but there's other ones up here. I mean, Plum Creek was purchased with it. And basically, a lot throughout. The goal of Volusia Forever, one of the goals, besides to provide a recharge area for our drinking water and to kind of mitigate against flooding and hurricane protection, is to also provide nature corridors. Why is that important? Well, I mean, a lot of our, not just tourism, but economy relies on having, a healthy habitat for fish in the water, but also for migrating birds, for, of course, pollinators like bees and so forth, to be able to find places to live. And so basically, again, just providing some information, because that's what I promised I would do. With this program for the last 20 years, they were able to buy 38,000 acres of land. They're kind of checkerboarded throughout. Some chunks are bigger, and ideally you want them to kind of connect, but it's hard to kind of get all the connections. So it wasn't that it achieved all the connections we want. They got as much as they could for the prices they could, but there still remains stuff left to be purchased, which is what I'm going to show on this second map, if I can pull this up. So the second map, I mean, this actually is kind of, well, it's back in 2009, and the reason is a couple reasons I don't show the most updated one, but, well, actually, because there is none, because a few reasons. Well, the program didn't run out of money, but it used up all the money that was available in the bond, really back when it purchased the Leffler property. I think it was called Leffler property, over a decade ago, or about a decade ago. And so around that time, there's still some, and there still are many lands that need preservation, whether it's to connect the ones we've already invested in, or to, again, just new things arise when construction happens. You kind of change the flows of water and so forth, and we have more data on where we do need to have protections. So there's a lot more information out there that, and again, we don't have like the current list, because if you kind of announce you're going to buy it, then maybe the price could possibly go up or something. So we're kind of reason to just come to that later, and not counting your chickens before they hatch too, I guess. But the other good thing about this program, if we can get it passed, is that Florida Forever, as many of you know, is a similar program. They kind of copied us here in Volusia, I want to say. But Florida Forever is a statewide program that purchases a lot of land throughout the whole state. And they just got funded this year. I think it was $100 million. And most of that money is going towards like the Everglades and some other stuff like around Okeechobee and basically maybe some springs up north, but we're not getting any because we don't have matching funds really for it. And again, I don't want to miss out on this investment that will help bring in tourism dollars, help with our farmers and our fishermen, and just really our quality of life, and attracting people to come here. If you have a job here, you want to have a nice place to bring your family, and also these do make our places, our whole city, our whole county healthier. It goes without saying that you need habitat to have species. Like if you enjoy bird watching, of course, that's one thing, and we want future generations to have species around. In case people don't know, this planet loses a species every hour. That's just mind-boggling to me. That means like today we lost 24 at least. So every hour, every day we lose a species on Earth, mostly because of habitat loss, due to just a lot of clearing of land, and it's sad to me. But again, even if you're not concerned about that per se, because things change over time, even on a planetary scale, then nowadays with the pandemic going on, it's good to get outside. It's good whether or not it's hot spot or not. It's always good to be outside and have the ability to kind of relax and just have gatherings, in a kind of safer and more relaxing area. So that's good to have these land. And again, all the land purchased with Volusia Forever is publicly accessible. It's not restricted at all to the people. I mean, obviously it's hard to get through a forest sometimes, but you want to take the trails. But there are a lot of trails available. And I do personally, support even more access if people want to make more trails. I know I helped increase kind of the trail along Spruce Creek Preserve itself, just maintaining just branches and kind of making sure the signs are there and so forth. But again, what is our goal? To improve the quality of our life, to protect our habitat and our economy, and also to prepare for any kind of hurricanes and so forth. If you build everywhere, as you probably do know this as well, we have some parcels here in our city. I just kind of learned about that. We purchased with FEMA grant money and I think maybe some other funding that was because they were flooding a lot. And so there will always be this. We're in Florida, a coastal peninsula here, so there's going to be flooding, and to have some matching funding for us as a city, we can only definitely benefit. So again, I'm recommending just general public, please support Volusia Forever, and then hopefully this is a suggestion down the way. Whether or not Volusia Forever passes, I would definitely be okay with having something similar here in Port Orange, maybe like super smaller scale, however you want. If there's like a property that citizens want to protect, I mean maybe out west somewhere, you guys have the right to put it as a ballot initiative. I mean maybe next year, 2 years, whenever there's a regular election timing, so it doesn't increase cost or anything. Ask the people if they would like to add a few pennies from their taxes to kind of have that matching funds. And just for the numbers on how much Volusia Forever is costing people, I believe it's roughly less than 1% of your total county bill. I mean, including state and county taxes. And for per household, I believe the number is less than $2 a month, something like that. It of course depends on your property value. So so please do encourage people to vote yes on that. If you want to learn more about it, there is a website that I'll just recommend that has some positive info on it. EchoVolusiaForever.org. They partner with Echo, which is of course another. It's a good program, but I really just care about the land protection at this point. And so, what else would I like to say on that? A few other pointers for people who might be on the fence. If you're worried about it, somehow it's a big government program. It's literally like the smallest program we have, and it does like the most good. So I mean, it's definitely good for small government advocates. But it also allows people to be more self-sufficient. And that's something I think we should always support. Because it helps farmers and hunters and fishers, fishermen, who depend on these healthy ecosystems of rivers and lakes and beaches. It also, of course, brings in the tourism dollars that people want to come here as opposed to maybe Orlando or somewhere where it's a lot more built up. Honoring individual rights. Again, people like this was not going to be approved, this wasn't automatic. People like me and we went to the county council. We asked them to put it on the ballot to give people a chance to do it. This wasn't just some big government oversight on on the people, trying to get them to do something. And feel free to ask any questions if you guys have any. I hope I could answer them too. But it's also, it will prepare us for hurricanes in the future. We don't know what's going to come, but if we have that money set aside, then we can make these protections in the land. And as I said, so maybe down the road or sometime soon, consider something like Port Orange Forever. I mean, that sounds good to me. I would like to have a Port Orange Forever personally. If it doesn't pass, then for sure, I think I would definitely encourage us to do something like that, because then we're protecting our own here. And then finally, as I mentioned before, just some topics on on the growth. So yeah, I've been working with, I work with a lot of nonprofits, and would like to mention that partnering with the 1,000 Friends of Florida, which is a group that actually awarded Volusia Forever as one of their exemplary visionary leadership, I believe it was called, for Volusia Forever. They're looking to have a workshop. They're looking to have stakeholders. They're looking to have realtors, nonprofit organizations, just local residents, chambers of commerce, and politicians, obviously, and any kind of decision makers at all to come to this workshop. I'm happy to share more details with you later once they kind of set a date. It'll just be a roundtable, kind of again talking about smart growth, low impact growth, and just good economy while maintaining our natural resources, which is what I'm all about. And so that's please contact me if you want to learn more about it, or I will reach out to you again shortly if you're interested. And that's all I got. Do you have any questions for me? Happy to try to answer them if I can. Okay.
Good.
Well, go vote, everyone, and thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Citizen participation non-agenda, we didn't have any.
You missed one more on agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
She
very
here?
anxious.
Where is she?
How can I miss Debbie? It's because I didn't see her in front of me. There you are. Come on up. Tell us who you are and why you're here.
Okay, Debbie Dorino. You want my address too
Sort of.
for my birthday cards?
What city do you live in? And we
Port
won't hold it
Orange.
against you.
I think you know where I live. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you tonight about anti-tethering ordinance and adequate shelter. So first, let me thank you, Mayor Burnett, and our city council members. Mr. Chase, thank you for showing me the way here and for listening to me tonight. The main reason that I'm wanting to present this to you is to try to get your ordinances updated. I've been going around, as you can see, to the other cities to get them to pass them. Lots of them are so outdated and don't even apply. So as you know, Daytona Beach passed the ordinance. Holly Hill just passed the ordinance. I'm looking for my town of Port Orange to pass it. I live here, so I hope that you will pass it as well. It was originally written by Lois Paritsky, town councilwoman for Ponce Inlet. She's a very good friend, and we talk quite a bit about animal welfare. And I really liked her wording. It pretty much touched base on everything that I think should be in an anti-tethering ordinance, and I don't think I could have written it better. So I'm real happy with it, and that's why I've been passing it around. Deltona also passed the same ordinance. I am waiting for Ormond Beach to get back with me. They have an ordinance that mirrors this one pretty much almost word for word, and they're just working on the adequate shelter that I gave them the definition for that. The reason we need adequate shelter definition is because actually in the ordinance it refers to shelter, but it doesn't tell you what shelter is. So I provided those pictures of animals that people think are in shelters that are going to protect them, and as you can see, that does not. Even on the last page, we have one dog that's deceased because, an igloo in the hot weather is just not going to, provide adequate shelter. So that's the other reason for the adequate shelter definition that I'd like to add in there. When you, down in Lee County, just recently, Sheriff Marcino arrested a man who had not the right proper collar for his dog, so he tied a rope around its neck, needless to say, and it was out there in the heat and everything else, and it just sliced his neck all the way around, so he had to have surgery. I didn't send the pictures to you because I don't want to look at him, so I'm sure you don't want to look at him either. that's another reason why we need to have the anti-tethering, so people know exactly what they can use as tethering. There's temperature degrees in there as well, as we don't want animals tied up 24/7 in 100-degree weather. They'll die of heat stroke, and they do die of heat stroke. So that's another part of the ordinance that I really like a lot. The thunderstorms, the lightning, the tornadoes, believe it or not, people leave their dogs out there in those conditions. I've even seen them in crates in the thunderstorms, and I'm like, no. So, so this pretty much touches on everything. The other thing is on the adequate shelter. As you know, Ponce's Law was my bill that passed. I passed the animal abuse database as well. I'm working on getting those throughout the counties. I was also awarded as one of the top 10 animal defenders in America. So you can imagine everybody tags me on everything. Like I go home, I get off work, and there they all are. The worst things you can imagine all night long. Can you help? Can you help? Can you help? I mean, I even had somebody from Tennessee just reach out to me recently to help with an animal abuse case in Tennessee. I don't live in Tennessee, but they're out there. They're all over the place. So in our county, I'd like to get everything uniform so that when you move from one city to another, you're not, oh, I got a whole new set of ordinances to abide by. This way, everybody's on the same page. We talked about the county has an ordinance also that they did about 2 years ago. I'm on the Animal Control Advisory Board, and I was there in the board meeting when we worked on that. That is only for the unincorporated areas, so it doesn't cover your area if you're in the city limits. So that, and it hasn't passed and it hasn't been presented yet. So I'm just going ahead and moving forward, trying to get, everybody on board now. Next session, I am amending the misdemeanor statute and the felony statute for 2 reasons. One of them is in the misdemeanor statute, it refers to shelter. And there is no definition in the statutes of what shelter is. So it goes back again, when animal control's out there trying to cite somebody for shelter, they really are not sure because there's no definition. So the same shelter definition I'm providing to you is what I'm amending the statutes for 2021 session. So I'm taking it out of misdemeanor, I'm sticking it into the 828.13 statute, so it's all uniform with what food is, what sustenance is, shelter is. So that's all uniform together and get it out of the misdemeanor. I gave you a chart also just so you could see with temperatures. At certain degrees, certain breeds are more apt to die from that temperature than other breeds. Usually the cutoff is, 85 to 90 degrees. So that's a big deal, for the animals. Mainly dogs. Most people don't tie their cat up. Cats are, I've never seen anybody walking their cat on a leash, so it's usually the dogs it refers to. And so that's pretty much it. I'm just hoping that you'll consider it and update your ordinances with it. Your ordinance from 1992 references shelter, but it doesn't tell you what shelter is. So again, that's 29 years old. You're right up there with some of the other ones, but you take the lead on that one. I think Daytona is like 11 or 12 years old, so all the cities are just outdated. That's my story.
And a darn good one. You have done some terrific work. And when you throw Lois Paritsky's name around, that carries a lot of weight with me because she is absolutely one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life.
Oh yeah, she's great.
She is. She's brilliant. And she's been one of my right arms helping with advocacy with Volusia League of Cities.
Right.
So that she's got a lot of credibility with me. So.
Yeah, me too. She's my buddy.
Well, what I'm going to do right now is request that the city attorney prepare the documentation, and I'm going to ask the acting city manager to put both these items on a future agenda once those things are prepared, so that council can debate and act accordingly.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Debbie. Good
Okay.
to see you.
Debbie, have a good day.
Good job, Deb.
Now, not getting ahead of myself,
Follow you.
we have any other citizen participation non-agended? That brings us to council comments. When we start
Nothing for me
with
tonight.
the guy in pink down there.
Nothing for me.
Nothing for you, Drew?
I'm good.
All right. Chase?
Well, nothing specific, just to comment on Debbie. You know, everybody has their niche at what they're good at and where they are most impactful, and this is clearly yours. And you know, your efforts and advocacy have been felt around the state of Florida because of the bill that you've spearheaded. So, well done. I've been looking forward to this night and talking to you about it, and following the other cities and talking to our city attorney about it. I'll be looking forward to supporting that. Well done.
Marilyn?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Just wanted to remind everybody, as you all know, early voting has begun. Port Orange has never had an early voting site before this year. August was the first time. Started a little slow. Our numbers were behind it, most everybody else's. Yesterday was the first day of early voting. We had more people show up at Port Orange than New Smyrna, than either of the two Daytona locations, Ormond Beach, and only Deltona, who had a slight number more than us. So I am very proud that Port Orange is showing up and voting exactly what I expected. We have more registered voters in Port Orange than any other city in the county, and there are two cities that have larger populations. So Port Orange, keep it up. Let's get it done. Do it safely. Don't want anybody pressing the buttons. Make sure you're wearing your mask and giving the distance and doing it right. But let's show up and vote. We've got 2 more weeks of this, and I am very, very proud of the turnout of this city and taking advantage of us. We've advocated it for a long time. Now we finally have that early voting spot in the city, and I just wanted to say I'm very, very proud of everybody, and let's take advantage of it and do it right. With that, Citizens Advisory Committee for TPO, Bobby Ball emailed to say that he would not be with us tonight, so that brings us to item 16, opening the public hearing portion of the meeting. Item 16, if I can get it blown up on my screen. Item 16 is ordinance number 2020-30, the rezoning of 4116 Nova Road. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, rezoning property consisting of approximately plus or minus 9.6 acres from floodplain conservation to commercial industrial, authorizing revisions of the official zoning atlas and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2020-30 as stated.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item is open on the floor for discussion. We have second reading. Council comments or questions? Anyone? And I'll ask Marilyn specifically, since you're on Zoom.
No comments, no.
Okay. With that, would anyone here care to speak to the item? I had a feeling that was what you're here for, Maya. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
Good evening, everyone. I'm with the law firm of Sheffield Lohman. My name is Maya Albrecht. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and the applicant is also appearing via Zoom. We are very much in support of your staff recommendation and are just here to answer any questions if you have them.
Very good. Any questions? There being none, thank you.
All right.
Anyone else here care to speak to the item? Back to council, comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
No.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
No.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 3-2. Item 17 is first reading of ordinance number 2020-34, which is a large-scale future land use amendment at 3835 Clyde Morris Boulevard. Ordinance number 2020-34 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, relating to comprehensive planning, amending the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, amending the future land use designation for plus or minus 35 acres from office residential transition and commercial to urban high-density residential, 8 to 16 units per acre, for property generally located along Clyde Morris Boulevard, south of Madeline, between Clyde Morris Boulevard and Bruner Road, providing for conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2020-34 as the mayor stated.
Second.
We have a motion and a proper second. The item is open on the floor for discussion.
Good
It's Community
evening.
Development Night.
Good
Hey,
evening,
Penny.
Penelope Cruz Planning. Mayor, City Council, if it's your pleasure, I'd ask that you also open item 18 as they are both interrelated so we could speak about them freely.
Had a feeling you might be doing that.
18, okay.
I'll be happy to do that in regards to efficiency. Item 18 is the first reading of ordinance number 2020-35, which is the rezoning for said property. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, rezoning property consisting of approximately plus or minus 35 acres from planned unit development to moderate density multifamily residential, District R3M, authorizing revision of the official zoning atlas and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2020-35 as stated.
Second.
The item is motion and properly second and
Thank you.
also on the floor for discussion.
Thank you, sir. As stated, the applicant has two applications before you. One is to request the amendment of the future land use map for 35 acres from office residential transition to commercial and commercial to urban high-density residential, and also to rezone the property from planned unit development to moderate density multifamily, which is R3M. Property lies east of Clyde Morris Boulevard, south of Madeline, between Clyde Morris and Bruner Road. Wanted to note on the record that the proposed applications before you do not affect the comprehensive plan regarding the extension of Bruner Road from its current southern terminus to Clyde Morris Boulevard. If the future land use and rezoning applications are approved, staff has already discussed with Volusia County and the developer regarding maintaining the right-of-way for the possible future extension of Bruner Road, but not constructing that Bruner Road from its current terminus to Clyde Morris as part of the proposed development.
That's the southern end you're talking about.
Making that full connection.
Okay.
It would not be required. This is that subject property, just to go over some background, currently has a future land use designation of office residential transition and commercial. It's zoned plan unit development without an active MDA. It was previously part of a 53-acre PUD called the Palms PUD, which was approved in 2007. It allowed for the development of 451 multifamily units and 187,000 square feet of commercial. That MDA was, like I said, approved in 2007, expired in 2009, and since then the properties remained vacant. In 2015, 18 acres of that original PUD were rezoned to the Palmetto Pointe planned commercial development and was developed with commercial development, including the neighborhood Walmart. So you can see on the graphic here, on the left is what that current future land use is. The pink is the office residential transition, the red the commercial, and what they're proposing over on the right, the multifamily designation. The proposed future land use category is compatible with the adjacent parcels, and the proposed multifamily provides that transitional use between the more intense commercial development and the existing single-family homes across Bruner Road. The infrastructure analysis, which was conducted in the staff report, results in a net decrease in the impacts to public infrastructure except for recreation, because you're going from commercial to residential. And all public facilities have adequate capacity to accommodate the proposed amendment. The proposed land use category also meets the locational criteria in the comprehensive plan of being located adjacent to a commercial node and along an arterial roadway. However, the proposed amendment is not consistent with one policy in the comprehensive plan regarding the retention of existing commercial acreage already designated on the future land use map. As you can see on the graphic, the 35-acre amendment would result in a net decrease of approximately 8.82 acres of land in the city designated for commercial. And if approved, that commercial use would change to a residential use. The commercial land use in this node was actually designated about a little over 20 years ago, and additional commercial was added over time. So the size of it that it is today is larger than it was originally designated. And also over that time, there's been a lot of change in how people purchase retail items and visit commercial areas. Even with this amendment being approved, the area there, that commercial node, would still have approximately 40 acres of commercial land. And of those 40 acres, 18 acres remain vacant and can still be developed with commercial uses. There are multiple options for commercial development in this node, as there's, like we said, still vacant commercial land and also vacant tenant spaces. So staff is, although this policy is technically not consistent with this policy, staff is recommending approval with all this in mind because the additional residential units could encourage further development of the existing commercial already designated and leasing of existing vacant commercial spaces in the existing shopping centers in the area. The second item that's open for you tonight is the rezoning request from the plan unit development to R3M category. This is a shift from that negotiated PUD zoning to a conventional residential zoning district, which allows the applicant to follow the land development code regulations and just develop the property consistent with the city's land development code. The R3M zoning district is for moderate density multifamily development on relatively large tracts of land in single ownership with a maximum density of 12 units per acre. Although we don't have an official site plan submitted yet, the developer has been speaking with staff, and based on the number of units proposed, the proposed development would be just over 10 units per acre, which is below the maximum of 12 units per acre of the proposed zoning. As stated earlier, the PUD zoning on the property was previously approved with 451 multifamily units and 187,000 square feet. What the applicant is going to be proposing before you tonight, they've since reduced, since Planning Commission, the number of units to about 360. So a lot less than what was previously proposed on this property. The LDC does not have permitted uses, though, for properties that have a PUD zoning without an active MDA. So they had the choice of creating an MDA or going conventional zoning. The reason they chose to go conventional zoning is because they weren't looking to deviate from the land development code. Actually, in several areas, based on concepts that they've shown us, they're looking to go above and beyond what the land development code requires. So because they didn't think they were going to need any deviations, they chose to go the conventional zoning and just follow our city rules. If these items are approved before you tonight. Mm-hmm.
Real quick question, just out of curiosity, we hear a lot of promises, if you will, that the developer doesn't want to deviate from this, and they said they want to do this and that. Have we had many situations where we've approved things in the past with the understanding that, okay, we're not going to deviate later on, and then they all of a sudden do deviate?
Well, they wouldn't be able to without getting a variance.
Okay.
So that would have to go.
And I'm not speaking to this particular one. I'm just
any
overall.
development. So you either follow the land development code or you get or you have to request a variance. So we ask developers when they come in early on to think through their plans from the very beginning stage when they're dealing, if it's a situation where you're dealing with land use and zoning, and if they think they're not going to be able to meet our land development code, that's when you would go the PUD, PCD route, because you then would need to ask for those deviations and have that exchange there. But if you can meet the land development code, there's really no reason, and, if the PUD, PCD process is designed for unique developments that are not addressed in our code. Our land development code has a multifamily zoning category that they were able to follow and meet, be below the density, and meet all the other requirements, environmental requirements, stormwater requirements, parking, architecture, everything. So they didn't feel the need to do a PUD because they were able to meet those and in some cases exceed those requirements.
Good.
And basically, if these two items are approved tonight on first reading and continue forward to second reading and are approved, a site plan would have to come before the staff development review committee, do that technical review. Staff would be ensuring that all those land development code requirements are met, as well as the comprehensive plan requirements. It would be subject to all our concurrency regulations, as well as all the regulations for federal, state, and local regulations with regarding to environmental resources as well. So with that, staff is recommending approval. I know the applicant is here and would like to make a presentation and also speak to you about some of those modifications that they've made to their plans since they've met with the neighborhood. They had a neighborhood meeting on June 17th, and they've had some additional feedback since then. We've kept the neighbors up to date as we've gone to every public hearing. We've emailed everybody that wanted to be notified about every single public hearing and kept them in the loop along the way. So I'm turn it over to the applicant unless you have specific questions for me, so they can kind of let you know what they've been working
Let's do that,
on.
and we can come back to you afterwards.
Okay. Let me get, yep.
Mr. Brock.
So Jeff, if you want to just go forward.
Sure.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Jeff Brock, 444 Seabreeze Boulevard, Daytona Beach, Florida, representing the applicant, the Collier Companies. A little bit about the Collier Companies. It's a closely held corporation owned by Nathan Collier, based in Gainesville, Florida. He owns 52 apartment complexes around the state of Florida. He has never sold an apartment complex. He is an operator, an owner-operator. So you'll have, this is not a REIT or a pension fund. It is a individual that is going to be here for the long haul. All right, so Penny described the subject property. There is a little triangular cutout that you'll see along Clyde Morris. That's actually in the county. We were not able to get that under contract, so that will be not part of the site plan. Again, as Penny mentioned, we've got both a zoning and a future land use application before you with the recommendation from the planning board for approval.
Jeff, do you have extras of those?
Don't. Got them all out.
Take mine and pass to the audience. I want to make
Okay.
sure that they can. Okay, I just want to make sure that they can see what I'm seeing. Just pass it around. Right over there.
Somebody in the back, Jeff.
I think it's only fair. No.
Should go if we hold it up.
Maryland is at a disadvantage.
Can you see that? Not very good.
Okay, so our requested land use is the high-density residential, which is 280 to 560. We are not going to have that kind of density. We're looking at 360 units for our site plan. Okay, so after having our neighborhood meeting with planning board members and meeting with the mayor and some of the members of the council, our site plan has gone through a lot of iterations, and I think it's a testament to my client and their willingness to adapt to comments and concerns received. First of all, to the north, you'll see that we've eliminated the northern building. That's 24 units. That was based on comments received on what the people on Bruner Road would see looking out their windows, and that is going to be a tree conservation area. We are going to dedicate that to the city. It will be trees in perpetuity. If you think about that on the impacts to the developer of making that change, you've got 24 units, say rents $1,000 a unit per month, times 12 months, times forever. I mean, it's a big number, and it's really, to me, an outstanding move by the applicant to address the concerns of the neighbors. Mm-hmm. Farther to the south, you'll see that our building we are going to turn so it faces the tree corridor, so they're not going to be looking down on Bruner Road and across to the neighbors. They're going to be looking out their back windows to the tree conservation area. That tree conservation area also abuts the tree conservation area that Walmart put in. So together it's going to be quite a nice, green open area. Most importantly, probably to the people in the audience, and I know to the mayor, we've eliminated the interconnect on Bruner Road for an entrance. And so that will not be there. There will be an entrance on the south, but it'll be right out only, and so they will come out near the police station and go on to Clyde Morris with their traffic, and our main entrance being on Clyde Morris. So that will hopefully address the concerns that were raised in the neighborhood meeting about traffic on Bruner Road and also on Madeline. In addition, the developer has offered to build a sidewalk on the east side of Bruner Road. It was in your plans, and it was still several years out. So we will actually be building a 4-foot sidewalk on the east side, and part of our development will be building a sidewalk on the west side as well. So there'll be some nice additions for the folks in the Bruner Road.
Jeff, what's the length of that sidewalk?
On what's the
On the east
on
side.
the east side?
Yeah,
Down to
yeah.
South.
I think it's over 700 feet.
Okay.
Those crossroad.
About 600 or so,
700
600, 700 feet.
feet.
Okay.
On the east side, and the west side, we're going all the way down. Yeah.
Yeah,
whole
the
thing on
west side, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Jeff, just repeat that, so.
So, yes, so on the west side, the sidewalk's gonna go the full length of Bruner.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the east side is about 700 feet, 600,
Okay.
700 feet.
Correct, and that was one of the items specifically requested from City Council to put into our TPO applications. We're still about 5-6 years out of being
Yeah.
able to build that on our own. As a public benefit, the applicant would be willing to build that for us now.
Okay.
So there will be so this will mean you could walk through from Bruner Road all the way down to Clyde Morris.
Walk through. Oh, sure, walkability of the Bruner Road,
Right,
but not
yeah.
our vehicles going up Bruner Road
Yeah.
to get on Madeline.
The sidewalks are gonna go to Madeline though,
Yep.
Right.
not to Clyde, right?
It's gonna be on the west side, the full length.
Okay.
On the east side, from Madeline and down, about 600 to 700 feet.
Okay.
Okay. So you can see on this next slide how the site plan has changed over time based on comments received. And again, that green area in the revised site plan is going to be a conservation easement to the city and in perpetuity.
Mr. Brock, clarify this one more time for me. The sidewalk, is that going to go from Bruner to Clyde Morris? Or are you talking about from outside the complex?
I believe it's all the way down, right, Steve? From
It's required to be west side from Madeline all the way to Clyde Morris.
That's what I was asking.
East side, just basically.
Right. Yeah. So it's the whole,
Thank you.
all of Bruner on the west side. Okay, and in addition, we've had a request from the county to line up Bruner Road with Regency, which I believe is the entrance to Pickwick. And we are going to do that, and we will also coordinate the driveway for the police station with those improvements and put in the infrastructure for potentially a future stoplight at some point. It's not warranted now, but it would lend for that in the future when it's ever needed.
Jeff, can I interrupt you
Sure.
one more time?
Mhm.
I didn't see it on the, is there any plan for lighting that sidewalk? Maybe walk lights or something?
I don't know that. I don't think that we have lights on that, do we?
At least on
I don't
the-
think there's
on the-
lights
on the
on
west
it.
side.
On the west side, no.
No?
So one of the issues raised at the neighborhood meeting and meeting with planning board and council was traffic. And so if you look at what's currently allowed under the future land use plan in the transitional area, you can do 75% commercial, 25% residential. And if you look at the trips, and we've got our traffic experts here as well, if you got specific questions, but generally, well, not generally, but the proposed project is much less traffic intensive and generates much less trips than what's allowed under the future land use. So we went through the various scenarios of 75% commercial, 25% residential, 75% office, 25% residential, 100% office, and then those were the trip studies that you saw. So what we're proposing is a lot less intense than what was allowed or what could be allowed under the future land use designation. Additionally, as Penny mentioned, this was part of a PUD, the Palms, which had much more intense use than what we're proposing. So fortunately for the citizens in the area, that didn't go forward because I believe there was over 450 residential units in that plan. On the screen now is a rendering, and we got some more renderings here of what's going to be built. Maximum of 3 stories. These are Class A apartments. There's going to be a pool and a clubhouse. It'll be gated. It'll have a wrought iron gate around it, and there will be a pedestrian interconnect to the Walmart, but not a vehicular. So there won't be cutting through the any kind of cutting through the parking lot to get to Madeline. Just another rendering of the unit. Clubhouse. And so,
Can you go back to that unit, please?
okay. That's the clubhouse, and then this is the unit. Kitchen for the unit.
Yeah, I missed, my screen's down, so.
Okay. Yeah, it's like I said, these are market rate apartments. They're not subsidized housing. They're not workforce housing. This is Class A housing. So we've done a market study. There is a great need for apartments in Port Orange. In a 5-mile area, the occupancy rate is around 95% on the existing apartments. We've got some statistics here about people who work in Port Orange generally are not living in Port Orange. So there is a need. Your comp plan also has a goal of offering many different types of housing types for your citizens. Across the street is some townhomes that are under construction, Bella Oaks. You've got some manufactured housing down in Pickwick. You've got some single-family homes to the east of Bruner Road. And the need is for multifamily, we believe, in this area. We've got, obviously, population growth in the area. This is some comps of where they're at as far as occupancy. The Springs at Port Orange, which I believe has only been open since spring, is already at almost 50% capacity. And even with COVID, they're leasing up at a pretty good rate. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. I've got the applicant here, the engineer, the biologist, and the traffic experts for any specific questions you may have.
Marilyn, since you're on Zoom, why don't we start with you?
I have no questions. I thoroughly reviewed this before and had occasion to talk with Mr. Brock about this. I am concerned. I want to make sure that anything that goes forward does not unduly impact Bruner Road. And while the applicant has indicated plans have been modified, I would like to ensure going forward that it sticks to that and there's not a change, as perhaps Councilman Tremont was alluding to. But overall, the reviews indicate less solid waste, less sewer usage, so it's not just less traffic and fewer trips. There's a lot of pluses to supporting this redesignation of the property, so I'm in favor of it.
Mayor, if I could speak to that comment and maybe the concern that Councilman Tremont expressed.
Actually, when she was coming out of that, I was going to say, what about that, Matt?
Okay.
What's going to guarantee the things that they're promising are going to occur? So, yeah, go ahead, please.
So we heard a lot about this, the site plan, and really, you know, to kind of bring this back, what they're requesting is a rezoning, and they're moving to a conventional zoning. And I talked to Mr. Brock a little bit earlier. You can't apply conditions. So what Penny said was basically they're going to meet the minimums of your LDC. What we heard today were a list of I've counted 5 things that were above and beyond what your land development code would require as a minimum. Those things, we don't necessarily have a way to impose upon the applicant. The applicant came to us and has said, hey, we're gonna, you know, be responsive to the neighborhood, and this is what we're gonna submit as part of an application. Those things aren't something that we can enforce upon them. We did speak earlier about 2 of the above and beyonds, we'll call them. The access on Madeline was a big concern. It sounded like as part of these neighborhood meetings. Mr. Brock and I discussed what he refers to as a spike easement. We call it a no vehicular access easement, similar tool that would create an easement that's not revocable along the Madeline frontage that would allow us to have some sort of assurance that there is in fact no access on Madeline, and that would be self-imposed by the applicant if they so choose to do that. We can't condition.
Bruner, not Madeline.
I'm sorry, Bruner. I apologize. The second one that he talked about a little bit is kind of conservation easements around certain areas with existing vegetation. Those types of preservation easements are ones that we often get as part of our land development regulations. But if there's some special conservation easement, that's something that, again, we could probably create a legal vehicle to ensure that happens if they so choose to do that as part of their application. The other 3, when we get into the building orientation, the 4-foot sidewalk that would be above and beyond, and also a cap on the density. I think 360 units. When really, I think he alluded to the fact that there's a lot more that could be built there. Those things I don't necessarily have a way to tell you that's a guarantee that we can kind of hold them to in the event that this changes. This is not a site plan for your review today. This is a zoning. Once they have that zoning, once the future land use changes and they get that zoning, they have all the rights and entitlements to anybody with that zoning. So that's kind of how that works. I just want to make sure that we're framing the issue for you.
Okay.
And between now and the second reading, we can probably craft, for example, maybe putting an easement in escrow with staff, and that way it's in their control, and we, upon approval in the second reading, they're free to record it. So it's out of our control, and it would be subject to that second reading. So we can do things like that are, give you some assurances that we're going to do what we said we're going to do, but we are going to do what we said.
So what you're presenting tonight to get this changed, the amount of units and the building orientation and the sidewalk and the whole thing.
Right. We volunteered those.
But you absolutely 100% are going to follow through on those.
We're going to do it.
Not going to change it and put.
We're not going to come in for a variance. We're not going to come in and ask for a change.
Okay.
And we can put some things in escrow, and we can make you be able to sleep at night, know that it's going to happen.
Marilyn, did you have anything else? Okay. Zoom takes a little bit more time, but I want to be precise. Chase?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is over in my district, right around where I live, so I drive past this every day. I'm supportive of it, but I want to make a few comments. I recognize, much like most, I seem to feel like a broken record because I say this every time something new goes in. Nobody wants more development around their home. I get it, but the fact that this being a reduction in density, and impact for that matter. And I drive past Legacy, Crystal Lake every day. I drive past the Groves, live right behind there. And the apartment complexes are much less of a traffic concern that I've noticed and I've just observed. I know the data and the science supports that, but just from an observation standpoint, I rarely see people coming and going from apartment complexes. I know they do, but it doesn't create the type of impact that people fear that it might. My only holdup going into this from day one has been a connection of Brunner Road. I would not have supported this if Brunner Road was extended all the way out to Clyde Morris, but since that is not happening, and and I appreciate the willingness of the applicants and the communication that they've had, the concessions made. does not go unnoticed. I do have one concern, and it's Penelope or Tim might be able to address this. And I know this doesn't concern the zoning change. However, the impact is still going to be felt by this, and I am going to have this discussion later on. I want to be prepared for it now. In the entrance down here in front of Pickwick, you say you have the exit is right turn only. Is that how it was when they leave the? If you can address that. Maybe I misunderstood that.
Penelope Cruz. I think what the applicant was referring to is their proposed access to the south, so that it doesn't have a connection to the north, would only be a right out, so that they wouldn't go north on Bruner. They would just go south out to Clyde Morris. The aligning of that with the Pickwick is something that's been worked through with the county in order to create a safer intersection.
Well, that's where my concern is the only right turn out is because of the amount of people that are going to be having to go south. How are they going to turn around and go south? Are they going to look at a lot of U-turns that are going to take place?
The right turn I was discussing in the applicant was on Bruner to go make a right out to then get to...
just out of Bruner?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, on Clyde Morris, they can take a left then go south.
Yes, yes.
Well, that's why I asked.
Yes, and the county was hoping to have that designed in a way because the residents of Pickwick and some of the other areas that connect, you've got Bella Oaks that also has that connecting street in, have over time been asking for a signalized intersection there. It hasn't been warranted yet. The road wasn't aligned for that, but this could make that happen for everybody in the future, possibly with that design.
My only fear of that going forward is if the people get caught in a light there, that can be tough for the people at Colony in the Wood to pull out, but that's a later discussion. But that was a clarification I need. That was my only cause for concern I had on that.
I got a question.
No, I'm good.
I do, yeah. A couple things. There's going to be two, from this drawing, there's going to be two exits onto Clyde Morris?
It's going to be the main entrance on Clyde Morris that you see
And then-
at this location.
And Bruner.
And then you come out on Bruner and you come out on Clyde Morris there.
Okay.
But you don't go up to Madeline.
Yeah, you can't go Madeline there, okay. The triangular shaped property that you didn't get under contract.
Right.
How large is that?
I don't know.
It's less than an acre.
Less than an acre?
Less than an acre.
Is it buildable? Is there
There
something
was
that?
a mobile home on it at one point. It's zoned mobile home and it's
Okay.
in the county.
Okay, so it's not commercial, so, okay.
Yeah, they're going to have a hard time developing
And
that.
then, Matt, this is probably for you or Penny. Does this impact our DMS site on Bruner at all? Off of Bruner? No impact on our ability to operate that? No. Okay. All right, very good.
Scott?
Jeff, does your applicant have any ties to the Ocean Oaks apartment complex
Where's that?
here in Port Orange?
No. This is the only thing that they have in Port Orange is the one being constructed next to Atlantic High School.
Same management group or anything out of some of the other complexes or
Yeah,
anything like that?
yeah, we just approved that one
Yeah.
a while back.
Right. So that's their first, entrance into Port
Up by
Orange is that
Atlantic.
project. Then this is the second one, but they have no affiliation with any other projects.
I didn't think so. I had a resident had sent me some information a while back. It said something about they use a similar management company or something to manage the properties.
They're self-managed.
They were somehow involved with some issues at Ocean Oaks Apartments on Dunlop, but that
sir.
wouldn't be correct. Okay.
No tie.
Thank you for clarifying. I don't have anything else.
Jeff, I appreciate you guys meeting with me and actually getting with me about my concerns very early. I appreciate that. One of the reasons why we have neighborhood meetings, I got to admit I was disappointed walking out of that one, and granted you've done a lot of work since then, but one of the reasons why we have neighborhood meetings is kind of twofold. One, we want you guys to communicate to the residents what it is that they should expect to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like you fell short on that because there's a preliminary site plan that showed up in my email a few days afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't discussed at that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very disappointed, and I kind of felt like that was a little bit of bad faith on your part. The other part of it, I think you did a much better, is listening to their concerns and trying to implement them and do something about it. And frankly, I know that I can't control property because that I don't own. Only to a certain degree as to zoning and through things like this. So I can't simply say, as much as people would love me to be able to say, no, we're not going to build there, or we're not going to, if I don't own it, I don't, people have property rights ingrained in the Constitution. But the things that I do have control over, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that my residents get something the best of. And a lot of things aren't perfect. I do have density concerns. I am, we have that's a lot of people that are going to be funneling onto Clyde Morris, albeit that's a whole lot better than funneling at least half of them down Bruner Road and onto Madeline. I thought that was a recipe for disaster. So I think that I'm glad that problem is fixed. I think that was first and foremost. But we're going to talk about this on our next item, neighborhood meetings. I just remember the initial conversation we had. And Bob Ford pushed it. He says, we need to make sure that we have visible signs on these properties. We need to make sure that people have access early on to the developers. So I just want the message to be that more information at a neighborhood meeting is better, whether it's well received or not. And it isn't always well received because you're making major changes to basically people's backyards. But they don't own those backyards. But they sure as heck want to know what's going on there. And I want it noted in the future that I'd like to see a better job of that. I just wanted to also make a comment. Everybody talks about smart growth, but everybody has a different definition of what smart growth is. People hate seeing cities sprawl outward and sprawl outward and sprawl outward. Well, we got 1,000 people moving to Florida every day and they got to live somewhere. So if you hate to see the sprawl outward, then we're looking at infill and higher density. And quite frankly, there are plus and minuses to both. I think people like, Scott, you live out in Water's Edge. You like being able to drive out there and have the remoteness, the peace of quiet. And there's some people that like to live close to everything. I live in the heart of the city myself. And sometimes density on top of you is one of the things that the intersection at Nova and Madeline every day, and watching people make left turns going east and west, sometimes it's a bit of a battle. But that's my battle for being able to live close to everything in the heart of the city. So just wanted to say for everybody who's listening and says smart growth, smart growth, smart growth, that's great. But we all have a different definition of smart growth, and that's something that the 5 of us up here need to struggle with as far as our vision for the city when these projects come before us. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Mayor, if I can just add to that comment, because people do talk about that, but we fail to recognize the cost associated when every time you limit land to be used to develop. When you have a demand for housing with the population growth and you restrict more land for developing housing, you're going to get increased prices on these. You're going to price people out of homes. So when you look at the 24 units you're getting rid of,
Yes.
they're going to make up that money somewhere. They're going to add to the cost of the other units. So that's what those are the cost cost analysis when you look at the folks that are anti-development. We want to restrict land to be used. We're getting in a situation all across the country where you're pricing people out of the ability to afford a home. That's why Daytona's having those conversations tomorrow night about affordable housing. So it's just a comment to consider right along with your
Absolutely.
with your comment.
We're in an economic downturn, and yet housing prices are still going up, and that's a supply and demand thing. So this is certainly addressing a supply side thing. So it has impacts beyond just this development. What else you got for us?
That's it. Just any questions you have? If you got any specific questions for our experts, they're here.
Well, I want to hear from the public before we do that. Who here would like to speak to the item? Come on up, Robert.
I've never seen you sitting over there before, Robert.
It's hidden over here.
Yeah, I never would have seen you stand up over there.
Council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive North, Port Orange. I wanted to speak with regard to the comments made by the staff as to the non-compatibility of the proposed amendment being not being consistent with the policies of the comprehensive plan regarding the retention of existing commercial acreage already designated on the future land use map. In the staff report, it quotes policy 3.1.1. Retain designated commercial and industrial development areas for their appropriate uses, unless such uses have been planned to be accommodated elsewhere. So what I would like to see happen is that you maintain this policy, that you stick to this policy, and before you agree to this rezoning, that you identify where this commercial space will be otherwise incorporated. So if you're getting rid of some here, you need to put it somewhere else, and you need to identify where that is before you allow them to go ahead. So I would suggest tabling it until you have actually identified where these other commercial spaces will be. So my concern there is that we see this continual chipping away at commercial, and so I want to see you identify, as your policy states, where this will be repositioned. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Robert. Fanny, make a note of that, and after we hear from the public, I'd like staff to comment on that. Who else wants to speak? No?
Robin?
I have a virtual one to read.
Okay, go ahead.
This is from Wayne and Carol Smith of Port Orange. Good evening, Mayor Burnett and council members. Since we received the letter informing us of the plan to change the zoning and construct a 384-unit apartment complex, we have been very vocal in our opposition to this project. We attended the planning board meeting where it was discussed and then approved to move forward with rezoning this parcel to allow moderate density housing. While we would like the property to remain as is, we know that is not an option. We do think that this complex is too large for this area. On the other hand, the idea of possibly reducing the size of this complex has never been approached, and I doubt that it would even be a consideration. I disagree with all who spoke at the planning board meeting, especially the impact that this will have on Bruner Road and Madeline Avenue. We have had an increase in traffic on Madeline since the Walmart neighborhood market was built. Turning left onto Madeline from Bruner requires a wait of up to 10 minutes or more at different times of the day. This complex will have over 800 parking spots and will increase traffic considerably. My last point will be the entrance/exits from this complex onto Bruner Road. One entrance that was noted on the plan was directly across from Stillwood Court. We are against this location and feel that cars should enter and exit this complex on Clyde Morris Boulevard. And we are totally against extending Bruner Road to the existing police department. Thank you.
Any others?
Nope, that's it.
We've heard from everybody? Okay. Back to council.
Mayor?
Yes?
Sorry, you got one more.
We got one more? You gotta make yourself seen.
Hi, Derek LaMontagne, Geiger Drive, Port Orange, Florida. Just a quick question. So in general, I appreciate all the land conservation mentions. I feel that was well, geared towards environmental people like myself, perhaps. But I also want to just say that I had a question, maybe from the renderings. What's going to be around the ponds, I guess? Again, trying to work with water quality people, and we're trying to follow, I guess, state guidelines, basically, to make mowing less around ponds, because they're the last area that can kind of catch any runoff from the parking lots and so forth. So I was just wondering what kind of foliage and trees or aquatic plants. I saw something in the rendering, but I just didn't know what it was. So I didn't know if if you had any more detail on that, or obviously have time to come up with the final plan, but please try to incorporate not mowing to the edge of the water. That's, I guess, my comment and request, so appreciate any consideration. Thank you.
Do we get everybody? All right, comes back to council. Penny, can you talk to me about what Robert Reinhagen was talking about?
Sure, if you give me a moment, Mayor, I'll pull back up that graphic so we can talk about that real quick. So if you see the graphic that's up on the slide right here, the red outline is the current boundary of that, what's designated commercial, the commercial node in the comprehensive plan. It's larger than what it originally started as, in the comprehensive plan. Over the past 20 years, there's been amendments to add commercial to this area. Generally, commercial nodes are kind of like right around the intersection. You can see this one kind of expands a little bit further down, Clyde Morris, a little bit further away from the intersection. So there's been some acreage added to the original size of the node.
Okay.
With that was part of the consideration when staff was looking at that balance of this policy versus what's being proposed here. Also, the other thing we considered was the fact that the overall node is 40 acres. It's a lot of commercial acreage, and there's still 18 acres completely vacant, as well as existing vacant tenant spaces. And we have other vacant commercial tenant spaces throughout the city as well. So taking that into consideration, as well as the changes in behavior when it comes to dealing with commercial and retail shopping, it seemed like this amount of commercial being removed from this node wasn't going to create that negative impact that policy is trying to guard against. And that the residential could possibly help activate this node to actually fill those existing tenant spaces that are vacant and possibly develop the other land.
Okay. One of my concerns also is that whenever we develop commercial space, the impact on our bottom line with tax revenue. One of the reasons we have the third lowest tax rate of all the cities, of the 16 cities in Volusia, is our balance between commercial and residential. Deltona has a unique challenge because they're over 90% residential, and because of that, the tax burden to run that city is extremely high. They pay a very, very high millage rate because of that. So that's why I think it's very important that we balance that. And Penny, I appreciate you addressing that. Council, other questions or comments? Scott?
Penny, can you come up real quick and just touch on drainage? When they had the meeting, the initial neighborhood meeting, that was a big talking point, as well as the access on Bruner. So if you can just kind of touch on that. And I know that there's a lot of size-wise, the retention areas look pretty substantial for a complex like this. So that looks good. I guess my concern is that bordering area along Bruner. Are there any? I guess that would be in the site plan, right? You would show like swales or a ditch or whatever along Bruner.
So our engineering folks, if this is approved and get to the point where a site plan can be submitted, would do that detailed review in addition to following the regulations of St. John's and the county, our regulations as well. We have a standard for that 25-year, 24-hour storm event. It's basically a no impact situation. Your site, once developed, it has to handle the same amount of water, pre and post development. And typically with the higher standards now for treatment ends up doing actually more than the pre, because you also have to deal with the nutrients and filtering those as well. But we've got really good engineering staff, and they make sure that's usually where you get the majority. We get pages of comments, making sure that that's meeting those regulations, and that there's nothing coming off site. Everything's being fully treated and following those regulations.
We talk about that, and thank you for that explanation. We talk about that, and I know we have that in our minds a lot of times when we're looking at these projects. But then once the projects are built, it just doesn't seem that that's the case. It seems like we create runoff issues, and that the you know, the water and stuff that would normally be retained on that property or has historically gone elsewhere. It seems like it ends up in other neighborhoods or adjacent properties. And
I mean,
things like
developments
that
that were developed prior to the 70s don't have the same level of
Right.
regulations. So there's a significant chunk of the city that was developed before the current regulations. The current regulations that are in place now, that's not allowed to happen. And we have, in addition to our development review process, when projects are under construction, we have a site inspector on site daily inspecting and making sure it's being built per the plans, to function per the plans. And then we have our inspections. You know, we recently, you know, it's been great. It's great when you go out when it rains too, to see how all those things function. You know, so I'm not aware of any specific examples. And we could look at that, you know, after the meeting. But you know, everything that's been built per the current code functions per those higher standards.
Okay. Thanks, Penny. I don't think I have anything else there. The only other comment, a couple for
Penny.
Mr. Brock and his clients, is I truly appreciate the time and the effort and the energy to hold the neighborhood meetings. I know the neighborhood meetings aren't necessarily required, although we do all feel they're very beneficial, and more so than just having the meeting is actually the ear and listening to what gets said in the meeting and doing everything possible to try to address some of those concerns. And I have had residents from the initial meeting over the course of time reach back out and say, hey, at least they're listening to this concern or that concern or what have you. And of course the Bruner Road access and impact was a biggie there, and then, you know, just the overall impact into this part of the city. So I truly do appreciate you guys putting in that time and that effort, because not everybody does that, and so it's very welcomed in our city, and I didn't want that not to be mentioned and appreciated. So for council, the only thing I would add and recommend is Matt's comments, pardon me, Attorney Jones' comments in regards to the access on Bruner, and also the discussion about the conservation land. I would like those to be part of an amended motion. Drew, I know you made the motion, and I'm willing to amend my second, but
Okay.
I would like to have those stipulated in our motion tonight, if that's something we can do, or how we get that on the
Or we're
record.
better
I
off
mean,
addressing that at second reading.
Yeah, we can address it second reading if it's council's consensus that you want us to work with the applicant to go ahead and have those. And the two documents we're talking about is the access easement, or actually it's a non-access easement, and the conservation areas. We can work through that and have it for you at the second reading if that's the consensus.
I think we should probably do that unless any of the rest of you object, because I want to make sure that we're thorough
Okay.
and that we're not doing it piecemeal. What else you got, Scott?
That'll be it.
Drew?
No, I'm good.
Chase?
One more, and to follow Scott, I appreciate you bringing that up, the drainage. Can you address, I just want to see, I want to be assured that there's a plan during construction. You know, getting calls from folks over there at Broken Bow. They're having drainage issues that they've never experienced before. And then the result is, well, they're moving the dirt around, so it's bound to happen. Well, it shouldn't happen. So I just want to be assured that there's a plan, not just after construction is built, but during it as well, so that folks over there aren't experiencing flooding that they weren't before.
I don't know if Tim, if you wanted to speak to that a little bit more. I think the situation there is a different animal. We haven't had that situation in other sites. This is different than that situation. Like I said, that's a unique situation there, and that's not anticipated here. It's not something that occurred on their other site that's currently under construction. This developer has an apartment complex under construction right now in the city. Hasn't had any issues with that.
I just wanted to.
And we'll have our site
make it
inspector,
known.
like we said, out there daily, and, you know, like I said, that other situation unfortunately is a different animal.
Marilyn?
No, nothing.
Okay. For my part, I still have the same density concerns, because anytime you add something, it might be different from what the maximum potential zoning is, but you don't always get the maximum potential zoning. So it might not necessarily be a zero-sum game to get us to a lower density as far as what our zoning is. I'm not, that does not escape me. And while I am very, very grateful that the Bruner Road thing was a deal breaker for me, and Jeff, you knew that from the beginning, and I appreciate that. I'm still leery of this, you know, and I don't think we necessarily want to reward people getting off on the wrong foot with a resident meeting, but I appreciate everything you've done since then. Not a perfect project, because not everybody's going to be happy one way or the other. But I know that something's going to go there at some point.
Yep.
I'm not supporting this moving forward in its current iteration, but unfortunately I'm probably in the minority. But with that, let's call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
No.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
No. 3-2. That was ordinance number 2020-34. Now on ordinance number 2020-35. Call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
No.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
No. 3-2. We'll be watching. You know that. My phone rang pretty hard. So, good luck. Congratulations. Do us proud. Take care of my neighborhoods. That's going to bring us to ordinance number 2020-36 on first reading. Ordinance number 2020-36 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending the Land Development Code, Chapter 3, Article 1, relating to code administration, establishing regulations for neighborhood meetings to be part of the development review process for specific development applications, provided for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2020-36.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item's open on the floor for discussion. Welcome back.
Penelope Cruz. So up until this point, we've been successful in encouraging developers to hold some neighborhood meetings over the past few years. They have not been required, so we've just been able to ask, and luckily we've been able to get them. There are some other communities that do require them, and we felt like it was time to just make that a requirement. It was something we were asking people to do more and more often. It also, putting the requirement and the regulations in the Land Development Code make the process transparent, so the development community as well as the public knows up front what the requirements are, and what that process looks like. It is the responsibility of the developer to schedule this neighborhood meeting. We do provide some parameters as far as how to do that, as far as notice requirements and timing, to make sure that it's held early enough to get that feedback and react and revise their plans if needed. So just kind of wanted to show you kind of an example of what that, so we went with a 500-foot radius that's consistent with other kinds of notice requirements in our land development code right now. It's a little bit wider than some other communities, but we felt like it captured the areas it needed to capture and kept that consistency in the land development code. So just some projects recently, the Springs, that shows the 500-foot boundary. All those areas that were touched were invited to their meeting. In the center, you see Osprey Pointe. Similarly, all those areas were invited. And we have another one coming. This application is currently under review. It's not to the point where they're ready to have the meeting, but when they do get to that point, that would be their boundary. You can see part of it goes into South Daytona. Just because it's another city doesn't matter. You still need to notify those residents because they abut the property boundary. So with that, staff is recommending an approval and can answer any questions you may have about this.
Questions, Scott?
No, I like it. I mean, with the ones that we've even kind of attended covertly, if you will.
Yep.
Which is nice. We sit in the back sometimes and show up unannounced, and nobody knows who we are, which is awesome, especially during well, not that there's anything positive out of a pandemic, but you can show up during a pandemic wearing a mask and it doesn't raise any red flags. And so it's interesting to see how the developers interact with the residents when the council members aren't in the room. But nonetheless, it does open communication lines, and it allows for some good things to really come out of them. Really is. And then it also provides, I think, once something like that happens, staff gets a little chance to do some of their stuff, council gets the chance to do, now you really can kind of talk some things out, because in a lot of these decisions that we as a city make, the reality of it is there's give and take. And is this a better project than what you could end up with, or that what has been, talked about in the past? So when you've had these meetings and things like this, it really does provide for a much better process of communication, and I do think it makes the decision-making process a little bit more effective as well. And and a lot of times in these projects, it's the little things that we get a chance to try to figure out how do we mold that into something that fits into our city. It's like we're the same way like everybody else. It'd be great not to have any development at all, but we don't own all the land, and we know how that's going to work. And we live in a very popular area in a growing state. So I think the communication aspect of it and these meetings, while they are time consuming and can kind of send a lot of things off in different directions, they have a tremendous amount of value.
We got a very different picture than the one that they were going to give us.
I was just looking at notes from
and that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I was looking at notes from June from when that particular group first met with some residents, and wow, what a total, just night and day, so which is good. That's what you want out of it. So
Drew?
Yeah, nothing.
Chase?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great idea, and I think all developers ought to do this. I'm not interested in mandating, though. I don't think it's my place to mandate good business practice, even though I think they should be doing it, and I'm glad they are. And it said something to me when they don't do it, and I'd always like to be aware when they do happen, but I'm not interested in an ordinance mandating it, though.
Marilyn?
I think it's a good idea. Unlike Councilman Tremont, sometimes you have to mandate good ideas because people just don't use good common sense. And so I would just as soon let them know ahead of the time what the roadmap is and our expectations for engaging the community from the get-go.
And for me, res ipsa loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. I think that I'm going to err on the side of protecting our residents whenever possible. And when we're talking about things like this, we've seen it before where projects have gone off the rails because they didn't listen, and then before this council, and we hold their feet to the fire, and they're wondering why things fall apart. Well, if you had listened and done that in the first place, I think we're actually doing them a favor by requiring this, because the time and resources it takes to put into a good development.
And part of this, we haven't had any trouble requesting this from the development community.
Yeah.
What they have asked for is, though, they want us to give them rules. What size sign? Who do you want me to mail it to? And we don't have those rules set out. So they always ask us for, how do you want us to notify them? How far of a radius? Because other cities have those requirements. And we try to just, say, use your best judgment, or we give them some examples, but we don't have any regulations. We can't force you, but they kind of want it. They've been asking for those rules and structures. So that's where we've kind of come from.
Would anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to council. Final comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
No.
Councilmember Stiltner.
yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 4-1. That closes the public hearing portion of the meeting. Council, usually at this point, I would take a break, but we're fairly close to the end. Does anybody want a break? You want to keep going?
Power through.
Power through? Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, item 20, first reading of ordinance number 2020-37, which amends the Chapter 54, Article 5 of the Police Pension Fund. Ordinance number 2020-37 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending Chapter 54, Article 5 of the Police Revenue Code, Police Pension Fund, Section 54-139, of the Revenue Code compliance to provide for compliance with the Secure Act, providing for codification, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2020-37.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item is open and on the floor for discussion. This was routine in nature and somewhat mandated so that we've come into compliance. Jamie, you want to tell us about this?
Sure, absolutely. So some of you who are serving on our pension boards may be hearing similar items. This is a cleanup that was proposed, reviewed, and approved by our police pension board. As you mentioned, this is to bring us in compliance with the Internal Revenue Code, and you have an attached statement of no impact to the funding of the plan. I did discuss with some of the other plan administrators to try to get their timing and making sure that they're bringing these similar amendments forward, and they do have these plans. The IRS doesn't require us to make these amendments to the plans until 2022, so I do commend the police pension administrator being on top of her game. But this is in pursuant to the Secure Act, and we're recommending approval of this item.
Council, anyone comments or questions? There being none, would anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to us. Council, final comments?
I think just the side note, I think you'll be seeing this from the general soon, because we talked about this at our last meeting as well. So
Very good.
And fire won't be far behind either.
That's the way it works. Marilyn, did you have anything?
No.
Okay. Call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stelter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonneville.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Additional items, City Attorney.
No comments tonight, Mayor.
City Manager, week 3 of this ride for you. How's it going?
Hard to believe it. 11 more days, and Jake will be back. So, you'll see me one more time sitting up here, but it's been a blast. So, thank you for that. I do have one brief update. I wanted to talk with you all today about our upcoming holiday events. First and foremost, on Saturday, October 31st, a reminder that we're going to be holding a modified trunk or treat event this year for Halloween. The biggest thing that I want to continue to get on the record is due to it to ensure appropriate protocols, people must pre-register to attend this event. So we've been trying to hit that pretty hard. So appreciate the assistance of you continuing to help us communicate that, and people can register on our website. It's right on the front page at www.port-orange.org.
I hope you get that word out well, because what a shame to be turning kids away if they're not aware. Do you have any contingency, any sort of?
We have a couple of things in place, including we'll have some signage presented around the area that when people are pulling up, those will hopefully help them realize that they needed to pre-register. We do plan to have a bag of goodies available if people do continue to attend when they come forward. We don't plan a way to send them away empty-handed, but we want to make sure that we can stick with our guidelines. So looking a little further into the holiday season, want to give you guys a little sneak peek. Staff is working on some fantastic events. We do plan to do a virtual tree lighting ceremony this year, and we are going to be setting up a lighted display around the city center circle that people will be able to drive through and enjoy all month of December. The first Saturday in December, we are also going to have an event where residents can register to take a horse and carriage ride around the city center and see that tree lighted display. So a couple of things that we're hoping to keep a little festivities alive this time of year. Last thing that we're planning is around different areas of the city at our parks. We'll be having Elf's Place where people can find them, take selfies, and engage with us on social media as well. So just wanted to briefly bring you guys up to speed on the opportunities for celebrating the holiday season as we move forward.
What else you got?
That's it for me tonight.
Jamie, workshop next week?
We are going to be holding a workshop on the 27th. We're gonna hear from community development. We're gonna talk about some TPO items, as well as their new permitting software that we're exploring.
Okay. Council committee reports for Step Shelter.
Just a brief report. The safe zone is almost ready. The only last holdup is the security. There's been issues with communication when Catholic Charities was let go. I did express my extreme disappointment and sense of urgency for our executive director to get that up and running. I don't want any more delays after the security has been resolved. I don't suggest that we send any dollars there until that is up and running and we get what we paid for. But once it is up, it will serve the purpose of meeting the needs of not just getting homeless people back on their feet, but also addressing the issues of being able to keep the cities clean, keep the parks clean, and local businesses to be able to have a viable alternative. So more to come.
Okay. Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce, we'll be meeting with them this Friday. They did have a virtual business after hours this month, and next month's is Thursday, November 19th. It is also going to be virtual, and it's at 4 o'clock instead of 5. It's free, but you do have to pre-register because they'll send you a Zoom link. Roundtable of elected officials, we have not met in several months, mostly due to COVID. However, in lieu of that, the Volusia League of Cities is having its first full membership meeting this Thursday night virtually. Hopefully most of you can attend. If not, you'll miss a good one. We usually have some very good, vibrant networking, and obviously it's going to be a lot more difficult to do, but we've got some topics to look forward to this Thursday night. With that, if no other business comes before us this evening, everybody have a good night. We'll see you all next week.